that is why talking to your audience can't be your therapy, because your audience can't hold you accountable. You won't let them. Because at the end of the day, you can just walk away from them. When you go to a therapist, there's an added degree of accountability. And so what do? You stop going because you don't want to be accountable to anyone.
Honestly, vlogging is like journaling. Like this right now is journaling. I just kind of verbal diarrhea, for lack of a better term, and I just kind of let it all out, you know? And that's always been something very therapeutic for me.
Accountability. They're all about accountability. I don't owe you any accountability. I don't owe you anything.
Hello everybody, welcome to my channel Delululand, where we speak about delusion. Today I'm going to be talking about a statement Miss Foodie Booty made, where she said that talking to her audience was therapeutic, and that she knew it wasn't a substitute for therapy and seeing a therapist, but this is what she chose. That made me think of how the word therapeutic has taken on a different meaning than the kind of therapeutic that's necessary for somebody like Foodie Booty. Now I want to go into the definition of therapeutic. So, what does therapeutic mean exactly? Therapeutic, of or relating to the treatment of disease or disorders by remedial agents or methods, having a beneficial effect on the mind or body. Now, when we get into the synonyms of the word therapeutic, we start to see how it slowly starts to walk back from something that is medical and becomes more about eliciting certain feelings within us. Relief. Relief is a feeling of ease from grief or trouble. Comfort. Something that adds to one's ease of living. Alleviation, reduction of or freedom from pain. And finally, calming, tending to calm the emotions and relieve stress. I think this in particular is what Chantal means when she talks about therapeutic. She means something that is tending to calm her emotions and relieve her stress. That is why she would assert that talking to her audience is therapeutic. Now, this kind of feel good attitude or connotation of the word therapeutic comes from commercialism and consumer culture. The idea is that therapy is something that you can buy, and that therapy is about feeling good, right? So if therapy is about feeling better, then you say things like, oh, gardening is my therapy, or oh, instead of going to therapy, I go running. Or instead of therapy, I sit and I eat large quantities of food and do nothing. All three activities can be classified as calming, something that can soothe the soul. But that's not what therapy is within the context of psychology, which again is what I think Chantal is coming to, that talking to her audience provides a psychological function that she would otherwise seek out a therapist for, but that she prefers talking to her audience over going to a therapist. And that is where the distinction between what feels therapeutic and what is therapeutic lies. And what do I mean by that? Let's talk about physical therapy. Physical therapy is something that people undergo when they basically need to relearn how to use certain physical function within their bodies. I think an example of this can be people who experience strokes, victims of strokes, who then have to relearn how to use their limbs and build the strength back up and adjust to their body's post-stroke, right? So when somebody is going through that, that's not an easy process. It's not something that's calming or something that feels good. Something that's therapeutic, particularly in the medical sense, usually comes with a certain amount of pain and discomfort, right? Because we are trying to wake something up. We're trying to build strength inside of something. And strength is not built within stagnation. Strength is something that requires motion. Because of that, talking to your audience isn't therapy, because talking to your audience, particularly within the context of trying to make yourself feel better, isn't therapeutic in the sense that it's going to lead to you feeling a sense of discomfort that is tied with growing and improving and healing. It is within that context something that alleviates whatever distress you are feeling. So when you are going through a difficult day and a lot of emotional distress, and you come to your audience and you vent about it, and they come and they calm you down and they positively reinforce you and they try to cheer you up, or other people come, we're also part of the audience, who speak down to you, who demean you, who laugh at you. And right now you are coming to your audience with the desire to start feeling good. So when you isolate the opinions of those who have contrary thoughts to what is going to make you feel good, and you surround yourself with people who just positively reinforce whatever it is you're doing, if it provides comfort to you, you are no longer in a state of something that is therapeutic. You are in danger, because you are going to lose touch with reality. If therapeutic to you means feels good, then you are in danger of falling into maladaptive coping mechanisms. Maladaptive coping mechanisms are basically things that we use to deal with our emotions and the difficulties of life that are not healthy and that are not in our benefit. For example, as a recovering alcoholic, I used to use alcohol as a means to calm myself down in social situations and make myself feel more confident. And it used to help whatever social anxiety I had, but I had this dependent relationship with it, where this isn't therapeutic. If I'm going to have to depend on a substance to socialize, then I'm stagnant. I'm not growing, and I'm not receiving any kind of healing. I'm simply within comfort. I went to a lot of therapy, and I had to start putting myself in uncomfortable situations socially in order to start to get over my social anxiety, because I realized that my social anxiety is tied to a fear of rejection, that if I do or say a certain thing wrong, I might get rejected from whatever social setting I am in. When I would drink alcohol, all of those inhibitions would just move away. But those inhibitions in and that of themselves were just a pattern that needed fixing. They were just a symptom of a much bigger problem that I dealt with in therapy. And part of that problem is being afraid of vulnerability. Fearing to socialize for me within that context was like, what happens if I do socialize and people don't enjoy my company, or they ostracize me, or they make fun of me, or all these fearful thoughts would just cloud around me, and when I drank, they would just disappear and I'd have fun. But I don't need to drink for those thoughts to disappear. I just need to learn how to command my own mind and how to steer my thoughts when I start to go into places that fill me with anxiety, and places that basically want me to act from a point of insecurity. So then you have to start dealing with that insecurity. So maladaptive coping mechanisms are basically the things we use to plug a hole, and healthy coping mechanisms are things we use to heal the hole as opposed to plugging it. Because if you plug it, whenever it starts to get overwhelmed by pressure, it just bursts, right? But when you heal it, there is no longer the seam. It's closed, right? So if you don't go to therapy, or rather if you don't seek out healthy coping mechanisms, for example, by reading self-help books that can help you train your mind to follow different thought patterns. There are so many resources, even just searching things on YouTube. There are so many professionals, but be careful. But there are a lot of people who are qualified, who are sharing knowledge that we otherwise wouldn't have had access to without the internet. I think Chantal's reasoning behind why she prefers to talk to her audience as opposed to talking to a professional is that she doesn't like how talking to a professional makes her feel. The thing about true therapy is that therapy requires accountability. I was explaining it to my dad in this way. There are 2 levels to therapy. What happens when you go in there? What happens is there's the first level, which is self-awareness. And that's when you become aware of your patterns and you become aware of your behavioral traits and some of the things that are influencing that. You gain awareness of the parts of yourself that you actively subdue because you're afraid to interact with the painful emotions that are tied to those memories or those topics and those things that we want to suppress. So when you are in therapy, a lot of things are unearthed, and that's where you get this awareness. But you can't just be self-aware or aware of your problems. You can't just sit with, your diagnoses and just be like, oh, now I have this, now I know this. Because sometimes the problem with self-awareness is that instead of inspiring change, some people use the things that they become aware of to justify stagnation and maladaptive behavior. So when you start to get into self-accountability, that's when you then have to take accountability for your own trauma. And this is one of the most difficult stages or parts of therapy. Because once you've unearthed all the shit that you have to deal with that you've been suppressing, you realize that all these very unfair feeling experiences, like all the things that have been done to us, all the things that are just biological, all these things that feel unfair, it's your responsibility to fix. After everything that's been done to you, the people who are at fault aren't the ones who are responsible for your healing. No one is responsible for your healing other than you. It's terrible because pain is something that can be caused by ourselves, but can also be caused by others. And having to heal your trauma feels like dealing with somebody else's negative karma. Like, hey, I'm experiencing the negative consequences of somebody else's choice. But once those consequences have come, whatever results of the trauma that was done to you, that is yours to deal with. And nobody, and I mean nobody, not even the professionals can do that for you. You have to kind of own it. Like, okay, clearly there are things that I am running from and I am having difficulties. I can either A, speak to my audience and have them make me feel good and have people feel sorry for me and reinforce my narrative, or I can go to therapy and run the risk of being told things that I don't want to hear. Run the risk of being told that I'm the problem. Run the risk of being told that I need to move and I need to make choices and I. Going from a place going from a place where you are comforted by being soothed, right, to a place where you are being challenged, not comforted, because comfort is something that can quell growth. Because if you get too comfortable in a position, you don't move. And if you don't move, you don't change. And the problem with not changing is the world just keeps going. The world just keeps spinning. Problems just keep coming, right? And you can never adapt to the world because you're always using the same tools. So your life starts to look messy. You start to feel like there's something wrong with me. Why can't I get a hold of it? I feel like I should be at a different space in life right now. How come other people can do this and I have trouble doing it? And oh my God, I went through this and I went through that and da 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 da. Then you just bury yourself under comfort. But comfort can be self-harm. And that's very clear in the maladaptive coping mechanisms that we use. That's very clear in how we choose to deal with pain. If every solution you have to pain is something that makes you feel better and good, you are not fully equipped for everything that life can throw at you. Because one of the most important things I learned through therapy was how to withstand discomfort long enough to reach the goal. To withstand discomfort long enough to gain the relief that I want. At the end of the day, in order to accomplish what we really want, when we want to be relieved of pain, is to be able to contextualize pain, because pain is necessary. If you're always avoiding pain, you're always avoiding growth. You have to be able to make yourself uncomfortable if that discomfort means that you are going to benefit in the long run. With Chantal, we've seen her go through so many therapeutic devices, so many things to calm herself, so many substances, people, males, any retail shopping therapy. Let's stop saying retail therapy. Any excessive shopping as a means of self-soothing. We've seen her go through maladaptive coping mechanism to maladaptive coping mechanism to maladaptive coping mechanisms. But there was a time in Chantal's channel where she did go to a therapist. And one of the things the therapist had said that could help her is to stop eating in her car. And Chantal never stopped doing that. She started doing it more. She got very defiant about it. She didn't like what she was told. It was therapeutic for her because it was calming, right? So she went through that, as opposed to the other therapeutic where it is that you take accountability for your weight, for your actions, for where you are in life, and you do things in order to attain the goal that you aspire to. So instead of constantly trying to plan, you move into action because you are now taking responsibility for the fuckery that is your life. It's like growing up emotionally. Some of us need more help than others to attain emotional maturity or to attain coping mechanisms that help us deal with life, particularly people who have mood disorders or personality disorders, people who are basically predispositioned to have a difficulty with regulating their emotions. People with mental illness need to learn how to adjust to life differently. There are certain ways in which we are impaired that aren't always visible because the impairments don't seem to be completely destabilizing, so we can still maintain some semblance of functionality in society. However, our ability to remain functional and well adjusted long term is impaired to a point that stability is pretty much unattainable without conscious effort. I do believe that Chantal is one of those people. The kind of therapy that someone like Chantal needs is the kind of therapy that feels very bad. It's the kind of therapy that makes you want to walk away. It's the kind of therapy that makes you just feel so terrible that you don't even want to continue with it. Because it's so hard and it's so uncomfortable and it's so scary, but you have to continue pushing yourself. And things that are calming and relieving and feel good aren't always pushing us. So even when it comes to medication to help treat or manage mental illness, that in itself is medically therapeutic, but it isn't psychologically therapeutic because it isn't giving you any skills. It's just changing the chemistry of your body in an attempt to help regulate emotions, right? In an automatic sense. But it's bigger than that if you're mentally ill, is that you have to learn how to have conscious control over certain habits in order to remain safe and healthy and alive and functional and prosocial. And unfortunately, without help, those of us who are mentally ill aren't able to attain peaceful lives. You'll find a relationship, but you won't have stability. You'll always feel insecure because you don't know how to maintain the peace. You don't know how to be secure and believe that someone loves you. You don't know how to not self-sabotage, and you are constantly in a state of panic because whenever you come into contact with anything good, you know that you aren't going to have it forever because you aren't always sure how you got it. So how are you supposed to keep it long term? Or now that you have it and you're inside of it, I'm going to lose it. And then you start to rush. That's why things such as people getting into relationships and then completely rushing to marriage is because you lack the skills to appropriately build the foundation that it takes to have the kind of feeling that you want. You want that love and that security, but you don't take the time to build the foundation needed and to use the tools needed for that. I think that's the most painful part of being mentally ill and not getting help, is that you will just go throughout life wanting things and you won't be able to attain them because you don't know how. Thank God that we can learn. If Chantal could lose weight and become healthy by herself, she would have done it by now. When I first reached out for help, when I opened up to my family about my depression and that it had gotten to such a severe state, I was afraid of my own life because I didn't know that I would be able to hold myself back much longer from going to the seaside. I just felt like I don't got it. I've been pulling it back for so long, but it's getting harder and I just don't have the strength to do it. And when I went to get help, it was not easy. A very, very long time. It hurt. Therapy is destabilizing before it is stabilizing sometimes. Basically, what I'm trying to say is you want to break apart before you can go together. It's not easy. And that's why people walk away, because they think therapy will be therapeutic, as in it feels good, it's calming. TV made it seem like therapy was something that had to make you feel good. But it's not. It's something that helps you grow. and growth comes with growing pains. So if your idea of therapy is something that makes you feel good, that's not therapy. Therapy is help. Therapy is strength training. It's crawling and then walking. It is school for your emotions. And when you are a food addict to the extent that Chantal is, and you're going that hard on self-soothing, it doesn't take a psychologist or a psychiatrist to tell that this is somebody who is really battling depression and other negative emotions, and their frustration is starting to consume them and they don't know what to do, so they're just continuously doubling up on the only tools that they have. But at this point, for Chantal, it's not that food is the only tool she has, it's just that food is the only tool she's allowed herself to master. If you are in a position where you are like, oh, I don't need to go to therapy because going to the gym is my therapy, that's not what therapy is. Therapy is a process of engagement with your psychological health. Therapy is a place where you gain self-awareness and a place where you find accountability. It is a place where you make goals. It is a place where you gain context and perspective. It is a place where you can come to a professional and have them help filter your thoughts and give you perspective. It's not a place where you go to just feel good or even just to dump your trauma and your negative emotions. It is a place of guidance. And so there is information dispensed, right? You have these psychiatrists and psychologists who went to study the field of psychology. They hear and pick up things in our speech that we don't pick up because we're used to being the only judges of our thoughts, the only ones who can give qualified opinion because we're the ones who lived. But when you come to professionals, they have so many other tools that you gain knowledge you didn't have. If your therapy is just a calming activity, you aren't gaining information that you don't have about yourself. You aren't learning new things. You aren't challenging certain things or patterns. It isn't a psychological process. You aren't engaging with your mental health as much as you are engaging in something that helps alleviate stress, which is therapeutic, but not the kind that you need when you are mentally ill or are undergoing a very traumatic or difficult period in your life. Feeling good is not always becoming better. In conclusion, that is why talking to your audience can't be your therapy, because your audience can't hold you accountable. You won't let them, because at the end of the day, you can just walk away from them. When you go to a therapist, there's an added degree of, accountability. And so what do? You stop going because you don't want to be accountable to anyone. But if you're not accountable to anyone, including yourself, you can just get away with everything. So your behavior is just out of control, but your out of control behavior starts to meet real life consequences. Eating yourself to near immobility in a country that isn't your home country, in a country that can easily deport you, is dangerous, particularly when you're eating yourself to a body state that can be beyond flight. Like you can't fly anymore because it's too difficult and the health complications are too high. That's what happens when feeling good is your idea of therapy. You've got to start feeling bad. You've got to start hurting. And then getting up and hurting again, and then getting up and hurting again. Healing can hurt for a very long time. A very, very long time, but it is very much necessary. So go out there and get uncomfortable. Anyway, thank you so much for watching my videos. Thank you so much for coming to my channel. Please like, dislike, comment, subscribe if you care. And if you want to reach me, you can email me. You'll get my email by my About page. And that is just about it. Goodbye.